Welcome to the She Wins podcast. I'm your host, Heather Sumlin. Today I have Adaline Bebo. What's your last name again?
Øygarden.
Okay, yeah, I'm glad I had you say it.
Yeah.
I will learn it.
Yes.
Øygarden.
Øygarden. It's very Norwegian.
I love it. Okay, great. I have not seen you until now since... Has it been since you were first runner-up to Miss Texas?
Maybe so. I competed the next year, so when I was top 5. But it's been years. It's been a lot of years.
So catch everybody up on, okay, who is Adaline? Just tell us your backstory.
Sure. I grew up as a baton twirler. I got a scholarship to go to Baylor University as a Golden Girl and complete my neuroscience degree. And while I was at Baylor, I had some experiences that called me to do pageantry. So I did my very first pageant in 2017. I was Miss Fort Worth. Went to Miss Texas, did the whole thing. Was really inspired, came back as Miss Park Cities, got first runner-up, and then was Miss Dallas in 2019, was in top 5. I was also College Miss Majorette of America in 2018, so the pageantry took me far in the twirling world as well. That year I was also National Collegiate Downfield Champion. I won my first international championship, and kind of took off from there. I won the World Championships in 2018. That really established my international name, and then later went on, got married, obviously graduated with my degree, got married after COVID, and now I'm due with our first baby, our baby boy, here in a month. So I apologize if I get a little winded.
Oh, no.
That's a new thing that I'm working through.
You're like, I don't have the air I used to have.
I'll try to breathe heavy away from the microphone.
Oh, there you go. I've had a couple of those. I loved certain seasons of that journey of parenting. Like every season you have something new to look forward to. So pregnancy, it's like not the most amazing thing ever, but you're so excited that you're going to get to meet this new one, you know?
Exactly. Oh.
And then every little milestone you get really excited for. So
absolutely. It's been something that we've been praying for so long, and now to be like right up against this next season of our lives it's so exciting, overwhelming in so many ways. Last week they moved my due date up, and that was a crisis of its own. But we're so excited nonetheless. Once the shock wore off, we're like, okay, we can still do this.
You can do it.
Yeah, like
you
never know when the baby's going to come anyways. So I think just knowing that it's been moved up was a little shocking. But we're all set to go now. We're ready, and we're just enjoying these last few weeks, making sure I get whatever snacks or cravings I'm having at the moment.
Oh, yeah. Then, eat whatever you want.
Yeah. And just relaxing.
I remember my daughter was 2 weeks late. She just was stubborn, didn't want to come out. Yeah. And my son was 3 weeks early. So I was like, okay.
Which is it going to be, you know?
I don't know.
And there's all these like wives' tales out there. It tells you like how you're going to know when I'm like, no, I'm not going to read a single thing. Just
don't listen. Your experience is your own.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk twirling a little bit, because that's what, when I think of Adaline, I think of, your routine at Miss Texas, let's just say.
Iconic. It gets brought up all the time.
You know what it is? It's because I've seen a lot of twirling on pageant stages throughout my entire time in pageantry, and all very, very impressive, and I love all the skills and everything. The difference was yours was like art.
Right.
It was not like twirling. It was very musical and powerful and purposeful.
Well, that was part of the decision process when going into a Miss Texas talent or a Miss America, any kind of pageant style talent. You see so many twirlers out there. They go out there with their 1, 2, and 3 batons. They do something pretty traditional. And I knew that was not my strength. I am not a multiple baton twirler.
Like, I need one.
Like I say, I'm not a multiple baton twirler. I won lots of national championships in it, but I knew that it was never going to show the same on stage as my one baton, my artistic style of baton twirling. That's something that I really developed from an early age. I was glued to YouTube, watching ballroom dancers, rhythmic gymnasts, former baton twirlers. And I had a very specific idea of what I wanted my twirling style to look like as I grew up. I'm not sure what inspired me to do that. Certainly wasn't like my mom or my coaches. My mom was a ballroom dancer growing up, so I was always fixated on those kind of like Latin ballroom fun routines, the style, the way that they move their arms, the way that they move their bodies. And I was put in rhythmic gymnastics at a young age, like when I was 6 or 7, so I guess that's not too young by today's standards. But I was so inspired by the movement, and it wasn't something that we were seeing a lot of in baton twirling at the time. Baton twirling was still pretty traditional, pretty upright. There was gymnastics was just starting to make its way. Things like front walkovers, back handsprings, back tucks. Those were just starting to come onto the scene right as I was growing up in twirling. So I knew that looking at the top 3 twirlers in the U.S. at the time when I was young, they all had their own style. One was super strict ballet, very technical. One was a little bit more aggressive, fast, dynamic twirling. And there was a third who was just so phenomenal at multiple baton and like so graceful in time. Like her timing was her highlight. And when I looked at myself and like what my style was like, I knew that I didn't fit in any one of those 3 boxes because everyone was kind of like, okay, who do you twirl like? We'll either gear you up to be a freestyle twirler, to be a solo twirler, or to be a multiple batoner. You kind of had to pick a path. You couldn't specialize in everything. There just wasn't enough time, or you just weren't, built
that's
for it.
That's a lot of stress and pressure to be really great at all of it. Yes,
absolutely. So you kind of pick an avenue. But I knew when I looked at them that I didn't fit into any one of those molds, and I had a very specific vision for what I wanted my twirling to look like. And I remember mulling over videos of even just myself and being like, okay, not quite. Like, what do I need to do to make my style look like art? I want the baton to be an extension of my body. I want it to not feel like a prop. I want it to feel like it's a part of the dance.
Ooh, I love that. Keep going.
But that was just my take on my twirling all growing up. I didn't have a lot of other inspiration other than what I could find on YouTube. Now there's so many avenues. Like there's Reels on Instagram. There's TikTok. You can watch you can take in so much content. When I was young, YouTube was it. So I watched a lot of YouTube, developed that idea, and then I just pursued it for years and years and years. And I knew when I wanted to take something to the Miss Texas stage that would be shared with the world, a little bit broader audience, an audience who maybe wasn't familiar with modern baton twirling. Everyone has this idea when you say baton twirler, it's like a majorette. You're wearing boots, you've got the hat, you're just marching. And I knew that I wanted to break the mold. I think so many twirlers before me had started into that journey, and they really set the path for me. And so when I decided to go up for my first Miss Texas talent, even at Miss Fort Worth, I knew I was not going to touch 2 or 3 batons. That was my first rule. And secondly, I wanted to feel like a competition twirling routine. Like you could, upgrade the tricks, maybe remove the theater lights, and it could be something that could be shown on the world stage, because that was something that had not yet been represented on a Miss America stage.
Oh my gosh. And so you've never stopped. Like you're not competing anymore.
No.
But I mean, let's please not right now.
No.
But you are still coaching and judging and you've just stayed involved. Why has it pulled you to stay with it for so long, do you think?
That is such a great question, because through COVID and through a lot of leadership changes and changes within the sport itself, there have been times where I've been like, is it worth it to stay involved? Should I just move on with my life, get on, a new path? But I think when you've invested so much into the sport, it's hard to watch it decline in some ways, hard to watch it change in a way that you don't necessarily feel is best for the athletes. So what I've done is I've gotten involved with the United States Twirling Association. I'm a part of their coaches department, and we have been developing a new curriculum for coaches to help foster that next generation of twirlers and make sure that they are performing in safe environments in and out of the gym, making sure that they are equipped with technique to keep their bodies safe, making sure that they're not pushing past any boundaries or in any unsafe ways in twirling itself. And that we're setting them up for success on the international stage as we're moving toward Olympic approval. It's definitely a challenging role, but it's kept me involved in a way that I feel really successful in. And also as a coach, being able to coach twirlers from around the world and bringing a little bit of that like technical aspect that I was talking about. I think that technique is really the starting point for twirling being able to move toward Olympics. So we have a new judging system going in place, like so many big changes, and I'm really positive in my outlook that it will be good for the twirlers in the future.
Now, obviously, I care a lot about the mental side of sport. So how important is the mental game in twirling for you?
Oh, it's you know how incredibly important it is. And I can't explain how much you and your strategies help me. Actually, a part of my COVID era development plan, I created a notebook that was similar to the one that you gave me when I was competing in pageants, allowing athletes to really list out their feelings, talk about, okay, what was going through my head when I was doing this? How can I change that? For me, it was a really long process. I went through a lot of my career being known as a dropper.
Oh, that's pleasant.
It's so kind to be saying it to a 10-year-old girl.
You drop things. Thanks.
Not at all damaging to her ego at all. No, but a lot of my career was known as a dropper, especially when it counted the most. Looking back, I have more memories of me getting all the way up to the finals at the World Championships, at nationals, at major competitions, and falling apart than I do of having those success stories. Luckily, as a coach, that really informs my outlook and my teaching style. So I feel really lucky that I had those experiences, because now I'm able to help educate the next generation of twirlers be a little bit more mentally tough or mentally savvy, understanding how they work individually. But of course, as an athlete, it was pretty difficult. One major shift that I had in my mental game was actually when I first started going to Baylor. I got invited. I was the first American athlete to be invited to Japan since the 80s. And I don't know to this day why they invited me. Like, I had a great showing at the World Championships the year before, but I got beat by all of the Japanese athletes. So, like,
so why do you want me?
Why did they want me? They later told me that it was because of my technique and they needed help pushing that technical barrier. But I remember going, it was kind of a little bit of a sketchy situation. Now looking back, I can't believe my parents just sent me to Japan. I got there and I was like, wait, who's picking me up? My translators weren't that great, but I had a great time nonetheless. But I got to see a little bit of the inner workings of Japanese twirling. They have a very different approach. I think culturally, first of all, the culture is so different than ours in America. But they have a different approach to baton twirling that sets their athletes up for mental strength. That learning, for me, changed everything. They have a system in place where they do not compete against each other until they get to the very top level of competition. They have to pass technical rounds. So at the base level, they have a standard routine that everyone does. You get one chance per year to pass and go up to the next level. So if you haven't mastered the technique in 1 year, you have to repeat it for another year. You're not allowed to move up until you pass it. And then you have to be at the top level for some number of years before you're allowed to compete at the world or international level. And only at that point do you begin to compete against other athletes without just purely trying to go for your own score for your own pass. So they do not compete against each other. They are only competing against themselves for the first, many years of competition.
I feel like Americans would get bored with that.
Exactly. It would not work in our culture.
Which is sad, because I think it's very, very smart in a lot of ways, because then you're learning the things that are actually necessary to develop that subconscious skill, to be able to rely on it.
Oh my gosh.
And and the parents aren't in the way.
Yes.
Sorry, parents.
Sorry, parents. We love you, but we need your support more than anything. But
your child doesn't have to win all the time.
You get in our children's heads. Yes.
I love that, though.
Like, it was so eye-opening. We have one system in the United States called the compulsory system, the compulsory achievement system, and that works the same way as the Japanese way. So you are only allowed to pass, 2 levels per competition. So it moves at a much faster pace. But there is no competition until you get to nationals. You are only purely competing for your own score.
I like that.
And it's one of the most stressful parts of competition for most of our American athletes. And oftentimes when they get to that international level and they're competing against all of these other athletes in this technical competition, it really stresses them out. And I think that for the Japanese, they're like rocks. They can take anything. The louder the crowd is, the more unshakable they are. It is absolutely phenomenal to watch. So I remember coming back from that trip, and first of all, I remember thinking, okay, it's been my dream my whole life to be a world champion. Is that still a possibility? After seeing what I've seen, their culture is so rooted in respect and discipline. I remember I was hired there to go perform and to teach a clinic. And I stood there in front of 100 athletes perfectly lined up in rows. And I taught them one trick at a time, and I would teach them a trick, and I would turn around, and they would all be still standing so still like soldiers, and asking my translator, like, can you tell them to practice it? Like, can you tell them to try it? And they would all just stare at me, like waiting for the cue. And they would try it one time, and they would return back to their like soldier salute position.
Wow.
And it was like, okay, no, keep trying, keep practicing. Even if you drop it, like keep trying. And that was such, I think, an interesting experience for them as well. Mm-hmm. But for me, I remember thinking like, okay, my culture is not rooted in that kind of structure, mm-hmm. in that kind of discipline. And on top of that, their government, their schooling system is very supportive of baton twirling. Mm-hmm. I was seeing a lot of the girls that I was competing against at international level had this massive arena at their disposal. Oh. And
Isn't that nice?
Isn't that nice? And I had fought for a gym my whole life, my whole career. We kind of spoke about that earlier, but I just knew that at that point, maybe being a world champion wasn't in the cards for me. Mm-hmm. As much as I could train, as much as I could push, I was never going to have the level of support or even the underlying groundwork on my mental game to set myself up for that kind of success at that level. And so I took a step back and I said, okay, if I'm just twirling for myself now, that feels like a pretty selfish goal. How can I make twirling about more than me? Mm-hmm. And that was where pageantry came in. That was when I decided to sign up for my first Miss America competition. And the rest was history. I totally changed my outlook on the way that I was going to approach performing. It was going to be for myself, but also to share twirling on a stage like that. And so I competed at my first Miss Texas in 2017. And 2 months later, or a month and a half later, I went to Croatia and I won my first international gold medal.
Ooh, you go.
Yeah. Against all of those same Japanese athletes. And I think what was really different about that competition was I no longer cared about the results. Mm-hmm. I no longer put so much stock in what the judges scored me at or where they placed me. Mm-hmm. For the first time in my entire career, I didn't look at the score sheets. And
good for you.
So it was such a freeing experience that made me so much more comfortable and happy, and the whole experience was so enjoyable. And I remember standing out there, lined up before the podium, and looking side by side. There was a Japanese athlete on either side of me, and I turned to them and I said, congratulations, you were so phenomenal. Because the tricks that they were pulling out in the finals of this competition were unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Mm-hmm. Certainly not like things that I had prepared for the competition. And so I was I had pretty much given up, but I was just happy with that I was able to go out and do the best performance I had ever been able to do, especially in a finals. I had been pretty notorious up to that point for falling apart in the finals. So to go out there and have...
I wanted to say, I met you after all of this, so...
Right.
So,
Oh my gosh. But I just couldn't believe it. So I congratulated them. And then when they called me as the winner, I remember feeling so embarrassed, first of all, that I had just congratulated them. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so rude. I did not know that was... But for the first time in my entire career, I didn't care what the results were. Mm-hmm. And so standing up there, hearing the national anthem for the first time, that had been the first time that an American had taken that title in a very, very, very long time, since the 70s. So I was just floored. And that was another big learning lesson. And okay, so maybe I need to not that I need to not care so much, but I need to not care so much about what the outcome is going to be. Mm-hmm. But when you train for something for hours and hours and hours, from 4 a.m. to 7 a.m. every single day, from 9 p.m. to midnight, when you're in the gym, it's hard not to care about something. And then even more so when you step into that arena that you're getting ready to compete on that big stage, how do you not care about something that you've invested your whole life in?
Well, you change what you care about.
Exactly. That was exactly it. I just changed that. I was no longer performing for the judges. I was performing for the crowd.
Yes, ma'am.
I knew that was the difference between me being successful and very much not.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that, because that's exactly, it fits perfectly with what we teach. It's really determining, when do you try? You try in training, you trust in competition. Yes, and if you're still trying to get a score, then you're working too hard. Yes. And you're over trying and you're going to fail. That's why you were a dropper, probably.
Yes.
And so then here you shifted your focus from, I'm going to try to win, to I'm just going to enjoy this and put on a show for an audience. It frees you to connect. And then I mean, twirling's subjective as well. So they're looking at not only does she do the skills she's supposed to do, but do I like that she did them?
Yes.
Do I like her? I'm going to give her a little extra bonus.
Right.
Oh, I love that. No, you're a beautiful twirler, and I think you still are because you post some things on on your TikTok and your what's the other thing? Instagram. Yeah. Yes, I'm 50, and so anyway, no, I love watching you.
Thank you.
Outside of the child, and then obviously you have all this Olympic hopefulness with twirling, which I've been hoping for since I knew twirling was a thing.
Oh, we all have. I think we've been saying that like we're in Olympic contention for like 35 years or something. And every time we seem to make a breakthrough in the process, whether that's joining the World Dance Sport Organization or whatever it is, whatever that next step is, something kind of swoops in. Like cheerleading joined last time in our place because we just weren't ready. Our two major twirling organizations have merged at the international level, which has allowed us to gain more notoriety. And then now if we can implement this new judges system, it's going to be very similar to gymnastics. And our coaching and our training programs, if they can become implemented and really technical focused, that's going to make a huge, huge difference. So we hope we can talk about it for 35 more years to come, but I'm really hopeful that it's on the horizon for us.
Oh, I love that. Okay, so how do you define winning?
It changed over the years, but based on this last conversation, for me, winning became stepping off the floor and feeling like I did the best I could do and felt happy about the journey. You know, I used to get ready to go on the floor and I hated that feeling. For me, I loved practice more than I loved competition for my whole career, which I don't feel like many athletes feel that way. Luckily for me, I spent a lot of time in the gym, absolutely adored my sport, and I would get to the competitions, and I remember the drive to the competitions. When I could see that the navigation number was getting within 5 minutes, the dread would fall over me, and I would hate the experience. And then toward the end of my career, where I would start to look forward to it. I would look forward to the process of getting ready to go out on the floor, putting that last layer of lipstick on, spraying my hair down, and stepping out and like feeling the rush. That for me was winning.
Oh, I love
it was
that.
Being happy to be there. And, you know, there were only, unfortunately, so many performances that I felt that way because it was really only kind of trickled in my last 2 years of competition, the 2017 and 2018. So, like, if I could go back and change anything, I would find something to shift a little bit sooner just so I could have enjoyed those years a little bit more. But the fact that I got 2 great years full of happiness and joy on the floor, that to me is a huge win.
You should start a company called Joy on the Floor. I like that.
I like that. I'll coin that.
Yeah. We'll chat later. I love. So what's advice that you would give to, whether it's a twirler or a pageant person or just anybody who's competing at a high level? What advice do you have?
I would say to find ways to simulate competition stress in everyday scenarios. You're never going to be able to escape the stress of competition. Like I was saying earlier, like, yeah, you can feel that joy, but you're ultimately going to feel stress. And people can tell you all day long, practice like you're going to perform, but there's nothing like stepping out on that competition floor in front of the judges. I can pretend that my mom is the judge. She can be the announcer. She can announce me on the floor. I can pull up pretending like but it's never going to be that true stress competition feeling. We used to do practice competition days where I'd get fully dressed in my costume, go to practice, and like try to simulate it as closely as possible. But that wasn't doing it for me. Like you're never going to be as stressed in front of your mother as you're going to be in front of some judges. So what my coaches and I really worked toward was creating stress in everyday environments, which sounds scary, but we developed this plan of like, okay, I have to do 10 no-drop routines in a row.
Yeah.
Now at the time, I was maybe doing 2 no-drops in a row. Like 10 was far-fetched. So by the time I got to that 8th, 9th, 10th routine, the stress was immeasurable. Like I knew in my body that I didn't have the energy to do 10 more routines. If I dropped in these last 3 routines, I couldn't do 10 more. And if I dropped, I had to. So that created this new level of stress that pushed me so that when I got to the World Championships and I just had to do 1 no-drop routine, I was like, oh, Thankfully, it's just
all
one.
the time.
Yeah, thankfully, it's just one. And that can be consolidated into, like, you know, doing something successfully 10 times in a row, just an isolated trick. Mm-hmm. Creating a little bit of a stressful environment around that trick is going to put you that much closer to what it's going to feel like being on the floor or being in front of the judges. And I think really relying on that training, like you said, trusting that training, that's so important.
What do you think is the biggest challenge that twirlers face? Is it not trusting themselves in competition, or was that just you? Or is there something else that you feel like is the biggest challenge maybe that your students have?
The biggest challenge that my students face is gym space. It's having the opportunity to train in a space that's going to be similar to that they're going to be competing in. Especially here in the summertime, most of my athletes are training outside. Oof. And
in Texas?
It's hot. And luckily, not a lot of them they're in California, they're up in Maine, they're all over the country, they're all around the world. A little bit more mild temperatures than here in Texas. But even so, like, my Texas twirlers are still outside when they have to be. And it's at one of those points where it's like outside or nothing. You either have to give up the sport or you're training out in the heat. So I think gym space year-round is a huge obstacle. I have athletes who can do tricks incredibly, and then you put them in a gym and it's like they've never done them before. Different floor grip, different feeling, being able to track your baton against the shapes of the ceiling as opposed to against the sky, totally and completely different. Obviously, as a feature twirler at a university, that's such a great skill to have. I had to actually learn to do outside twirling a little bit more successfully when I moved to Texas. Being from Indiana, I crawled in every little gym I could find. I was a little bit of a gym rat because it snowed so much of the year, and then in the summertime we were traveling for competition. So I never really had to twirl outside, but it wasn't because for lack of effort. I had 6 gym memberships. I was really fortunate to be able to afford that. That kind of creates this additional barrier to twirling that makes it even more difficult for families that maybe aren't as fortunate. I had so many gym memberships. I tithed to churches that had gyms just to be able to practice in their facilities. We traveled 2 hours. I was homeschooled for a period of time just so we could drive 2 hours up to Indiana University to practice in their gyms. And even then, we'd drive the 2 hours, get there, someone in street clothes would walk in, start bouncing the basketball, and they'd be like, okay, you're out. Basketball is king in Indiana. Same way football's king here in Texas. Basketball is king in Indiana. So if someone wanted to bounce a basketball, you're out. So I would sit around all day waiting for people just bouncing the basketball to leave so I could have the gym again. Or sometimes we'd just end up staying in a hotel just so that I could get some gym space the next day without having to make the 2-hour drive. But if I could just think about all the other things that I could be doing with that amount of time, the training that I could have been doing in that amount of time, or the schoolwork, or the self-development, or, there's so many different things that go into this whole twirling process. But for me, looking at all my athletes, gym space is the biggest barrier to success for them. And I really hope that it's something that we can learn to work around in the future. Many people have talked about building their own gym spaces. My parents talked about it, with my uncle owning a lot of patents on athletic facilities. We thought about building it, but then you're tied to bills, air conditioning bills, maintenance bills. Living in Indiana forever would have been a big obstacle.
It has to make financial sense.
Exactly. And for many people, it just doesn't.
It'd be like building an ice skating rink because you skate,
Exactly. It's just not reasonable. So finding those gym spaces that are reliable and fit within your schedule, that are within proximity of your house, it's just so difficult. And I see so many of my athletes every single year, they're training outside every single day, and then they get to the national championships and they're just overwhelmed.
It's a different environment. You're training in completely different environment, and so then it's apples and oranges.
Exactly. It's like you're not even practicing the same sport.
Yeah, that's pretty sad.
In soccer, we're turning into my Norwegian husband here, calling it football, but there's football and there's futsal. Indoor soccer is a completely different sport than outdoor soccer, and I believe that it's very similar in twirling. There's majorette twirling, feature twirling outside, and there's competitive twirling that belongs inside.
Well, and obviously what you can do on a field is different than what you can do in a gym.
Completely. You'd never catch me doing half the tricks on a field that I'd be doing in a gym.
Well, and there's a difference in the lighting and the footing, and
it's different.
The distractions are different.
Completely different gear involved. Most of my twirlers twirling completely different shoes, like almost like tennis shoe style when they're twirling outside, and it's jazz shoes inside. It's completely different. And, you know, it seems like such minor details, but when you're at that high level and you're just looking for something reliable and you're trying to rely back on that training and trust in it, it's so difficult. So I'm really hoping through our coaching program that I'm developing with the United States Twirling Association, each coach is granted a $2 million insurance policy when they pass the Judges Level 1 course. Of course, they have to modify the insurance policy to reflect the name of the facility that they're going to each time. But that has allowed a lot of coaches and athletes into spaces that they were previously not allowed for insurance purposes. So hopefully,
I love that.
Hopefully that makes it a little bit more accessible to these athletes. But in the meantime, it's definitely the biggest barrier.
So what's your advice to everyone watching if they want to get started in twirling?
I would say to do some research. Watch lots of videos on YouTube. That's my secret to success, I think. But watch lots of videos on YouTube. Do some research. The United States Twirling Association has a really great resource online where you can put in your zip code and it gives you coaches in your area.
Oh, that's nice.
But now more than ever, online coaching is so accessible. I remember when I started teaching online, people from the Philippines, people from parts of Africa, people from parts all over Asia, like countries that have never twirled. I taught twirlers in Russia, twirlers in Kazakhstan, all virtually. And these were countries that I would probably never get the opportunity to travel to. And these were twirlers who didn't have the support of an organization around them. They just saw a video online and picked it up. And they were able to gain access to training virtually. And it was so inspiring to me. People of all ages. I remember one sweet lady from the Philippines. She was older and she was an ice skating instructor, but she had this passion for baton twirling and she had this dream of learning this one specific twirling roll. And she would come to every single course, even if it was 2 o'clock in the morning. I remember she got a hip replacement and the next morning was in my course at like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute.
It was so incredible. And I still cherish those memories and cherish that opportunity. That's why I leave my YouTube videos up and available to anyone who wants to watch them.
So how do they find them?
Adaline Bebo on YouTube, or Addie Twirls, I think is the tag is at Addie Twirls. So all of those resources are free and available to anyone around the world. So finding accessible training, of course, just to get started, being inspired, and then just going for it. You are never too young or too old to start twirling. You are never in a situation you can get a hip replacement and keep twirling.
Apparently.
So don't let anything stop you, and take it slow, but learn the technically correct way. That's probably my biggest piece of advice. Like, don't rush through things just to learn the flashy, cool things. By learning the basic building blocks, you set yourself up for a platform of success down the line. And I think that goes for anything in life, of course. Like, really take the time to invest in your training in the beginning, and it will pay off at the end.
Love it. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
We are going to spend a little more time together. If you are not a Patreon member, I highly recommend that you join She Wins Solutions for Pageantry Patreon. I'm going to pick your pageant brain.
Of course.
Awesome.